What's up with Fire Dragon from Manjome's deck? Whatever happened for Cyber Dragon to be created? And what is going on with some of these GX exclusive cards like the support for vampires? You guys smash the crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out more content. So this is something very, very rare. We're going to be going over the GX Duel Memorial albums. There are 5 parts to this. I'll include them all in this video so we can talk about this. And no, there's nothing from the episode 1 through 19. So let's look back at the time that Mr. Hikubo Mashiro, who was in charge of the Duel composition for this. So Duel Memorial album number 1. From this time on, we'll discuss some points to be on the lookout for the contents of the duel matching that are of the current airing episodes. My name is Hiko Kubo, and I was in charge of duel composition for GX. I never thought I would talk about the duels from the past 20 years later, but I would hope that you are feeling nostalgic about this time watching some of these duels. So let's talk about some of these, because this is interesting to get inside of why certain cards are made. So turn 20 originally was decided that Satome Rei would use the unhappy girl as the centerpiece of her deck, and the duel was created around that. But in the final version, it was decided that to represent a young girl who was in love with being in love, like Rei, a new monster called Maiden of Love was created. In addition, I thought about, since monster spirits can be seen in the series, maybe we can create a duel like this and added a small skip between monsters, leading to the final conclusion of the duel. Looking back on it, we definitely challenged ourselves a lot in this episode. And I like how we used Burst Lady as well, which is kind of cool looking back. So this explains the creation of this. Now, turn 21 and turn 22. So we also had a lot of fun every time we got to make an episode where Misawa duels, in which logic and cards are linked together to create the duel. Luminous no Shishio no Kenshin, or the Luminous Doom Swordsman, was originally called Litmus Shinkenshi, but when I heard that name being pronounced, it was hard to recognize as the name of a monster, thus the current name. At a time I was thinking, but it's fine anyway, but thinking about it now, I realized that they were right about it. So for the Litmus name, originally it was the Litmus Death Knight, but the final name ended up being the Knight of Death of Litmus, or Litmus Death Knight. Now turn 23. Alright, so if I recall correctly, it was thanks to pushing of one script writer who liked the illustration that we decided to use Moki Moki. He would make a great pair of Moki or Below Sky, or maybe a quartet. Arc note here, it is not stated if the script writer is Suzuki Yasuzuki or not. And then turn 24, this is the debut of Ojama Yellow, and they never had thought that this would become one of the monsters to represent GX. So, interesting. Alright, let's go into album number 2 here. So, the many deck charms of Manjome's, turn 25 and 26. There's a lot here. Manjome's decks continue to change. He started with a Jethonian deck that included cards like Jethonian Soldier, then he switched to the VWXYZ, then a deck made from the discarded cards of the Northern Branch, as well as an armed dragon deck. Of course, the primary reason we kept changing his deck was to accommodate his character growth, but there was also production side issues with the anime. Duels who were watching the show when it originally aired might have noticed. Didn't you notice that Manjome would mostly use cards that already existed in the official card game? That's interesting. Weekly anime cannot be broadcast unless the production is able to stably release an episode per week, and production happens several months ahead of the broadcast, and several episodes will be produced parallel. So due to the nature of this project, this would inevitably lead to a large amount of monsters being designed, and ultimately something that you can't avoid because, again, the nature of the project. But if we could reduce the stress of production even a smidge, who would have thought the process? Personally, I tried to make it possible to regularly use existing cards in duels, but there's also still the hassle of adapting those. So, this gives rise to decks like Manjome's Hell deck, which didn't have an actual coherent strategy, but it had a perfect villain-shaped atmosphere to it, while VWXYZ used the deck's existing tactics while adding a shocking surprise of new cards alongside. That's actually kind of cool to see. The time around with his Armed Dragon deck, yes, I was thinking, I wonder if Armed Dragon, which has its level up effect, could be linked to Manjome competing with his warrior side in training witnessed at the Northern School, which made up his level up side. Personally, I was grateful that there were cards that we could manage to last for two partners, or for the two-parter, though it required some trial and error. But I think Manjome's style of using different cards one after another ended up being one of his key charms for his character. That's actually really, really cool. Turn 27 and 28, just like duel monsters, if you would normal summon a monster in defense mode in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, you could bring it out and face up defense position. Now, if you have been following the flow set in the original comics, since it's an anime, those vibes were important. It's not an arbitrary decision, but one I made on a case-by-case basis with input from the producers. However, when using the official card game, if you would normal summon a monster with a flip effect, you would have to normal summon it but from face down. Gravekeeper's Guard was one such case. On the other hand, it turns out it's a monster with a flip effect. It's hard to explain. The specifics of this sort of thing changes little by little depending on the series, which is something that you can only see in the long-running series. That one's not too important, but this is where we get into the interesting stuff. So these are some little questions, and yes, that is Vampire Genesis. Around the time of the show airing, was there any request from the official card game side of things that they would want to include in the show? So, I wasn't in direct communication with Konami during the days of GX, but I think that there was some nuanced discussion with the producers about adding certain cards. As a side note, in the case of Most Hobby and the timing of the on-air appearance and new products, a new item appeared in a commercial to show, hey, you can go buy this, which actually is common marketing. Sometimes, however, the release date of certain cards would match their on-air appearance on the TV show. In those cases, we got information about those cards before they were released, and we used that information in the TV show. I apologize, as it's being some time, I might have forgot some of the specifics here. That's fine. But there are also cases where I did take a card, build a theme around it. Two such examples were Red Eye's Darkness Dragon from turn 30 and Vampire Genesis for turn 31. Both were cards included in a structure deck, and I and the staff picked them because they were very easy for viewers to get, and they had appealing effects. They were just strong enough to work as the ace cards for villains in the show. Marketing, baby! It works! We chose these cards because we thought the audience, and we felt that it would be nice to see these cards you can actually play as part of the TV show. I agree with that. Can you tell us exactly how the job of the duel composition works? So many of them seem like to be interested in my job. First of all, focusing on matchmaking of who will fight based on the series of composition and structure. There's a wide range of things to think about, such as the deck image of each character, key cards you want to show, such as the Sacred Beast. It's also important to propose images of card illustrations, give lectures on dueling on the screenwriters, and check the completed. Holy crap, there's so much more. For each episode's duel, I made a character chart like this. Not really a chart, but it calls for the convenience, which basically is documented for the duel. I mean, flowchart makes sense. Now we get down here into turn 29 and 30. So this was a duel focused on the card Red Eye's Darkness Dragon. In order to take advantage of its effect, I had to design the duel backwards to take advantage of its effect in order to prevent people from thinking he's going to play Red Eye's Darkness Dragon, isn't he? I cornered Judai with the combo using the Red Eye's Black Dragon from the start of the duel. In the second half of the duel, the role of the Black Dragon from the first half amped up the excitement and entertainment. That's kind of cool. This one, turn 31. I'm deeply attached to Professor Kronos' Ancient Gear Dragon as it's GX's original ace monster I thought up early on. I figured it would be a monster that would actively be used at the start to the end, and I changed the means and method that Kronos used to summon it specifically so it wouldn't feel like it was a routine yard sale piece of junk. Since Professor Kronos is a teacher, I hope his duel is able to convey the idea that there is more than one right answer. That's very, very true. The Illusion Gate in the duel with Kaiser. A duel in which Kaiser lost. I was worried how to sell the loss of the story's strongest and best duelist. If you play a card so powerful, it seems like a complete fraud. It raises viewers' expectations that Kaiser was able to do something about. If we let a duelist lose, it loses the standing of the duelist. So we needed a variety of ideas to prevent that feeling, and then we came up with the various ideas and scenarios that could happen in the duel. So duel composition is a job where it takes time to complete the work, and we have to basically create bullshit cards like this. However, There are times where multiple script writers will place requests at the same time, so I'd need to go through the preliminary work. As dual composition, we'd often have to have complete per episode, since any mistakes would have to also be corrected. Sometimes episodes would take 10 plus versions in order to necessarily make the changes. That's kind of crazy. So this is also kind of cool. Fubuki also used a lot of the cards owned by Joey, such as Red Eyes, and was because it was an older brother with a sister. I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting. And why are there so many Ojamas chosen to be Manjome's spirit animal? I think it was because Yoshinida Shinsan, one of the scriptwriters, liked the idea and went with that direction. It's kind of cool. All right. So the Cyber Dragon question. Turn 33 and the Genesis Crisis spell card. The continuous spell card, Genesis Crisis, which was used in tandem with Vampire Genesis, was intended to be an absurdly powerful card that used its effect of twice or once without hesitation in order to allow Glaucoma's dark powers to stand out more and make the Shining Flare Wingman literally shine even brighter in the duel. At least that's what I intended to, but the combo enabled was kind of boring. I would suggest things like this, but the flavor changes depending on the length of tempo. I regret not being able to make that combo stand out more. Oh, hey, look! I also wrote the plot scenario for the Game Boy Advance Duel Monsters 8 Chef of Destruction, which one of the events included Kaiba Man, who I was surprised came to the official Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game and ended up wondering could they appear in the anime as a spirit. And despite that fact, if Kaiba Man is a monster completely separate from Kaiba, he ended up being voiced by Kenjiro-san. I remember thinking, it's gotta be cool. That's actually awesome. Turn 35. Oh boy. When I was ordered for the episode for scriptwriter Yoshida-san to hammer together a deck with 0 attack, I was like, how can I make this work? Reviving Ojamas only to destroy them with Thunderclash gave Yoshida a good laugh. That's kind of funny. In turn 23, what deck did Mokigo play before switching to Moki Moki? Unfortunately, there wasn't any documentation, but we were thinking about Slime or Jam to emphasize the softness angle, and then he met Moki Moki, and it kind of changed his life. I know I'm kind of proofreading here. And then Cyber Dragon. So what ideas did you consider for the Cyber Dragon theme used by Rio? I'd love to hear how you came up with some of these cards in the duels. As Judai's biggest rival, I knew Rio's deck had to include powerful monsters. So it was extremely tempting to give him dragons, but that would make him too similar to Kaiba and would bring nothing new to the table. So I ended up proposing why not a machine type dragon as a symbol for new strength. At the same time, I was thinking to myself, how can I make level 5s more powerful? So I came up with the effect that would allow it to be treated as a low level summon and so forth. Isn't that crazy that Cyber Dragon was made on the concept of just being a monster to beam out? Cyber End Dragon was originally, I was originally concerned about not being able to fit the ultimate form, but one of the staff members ended up suggesting its current name, and we took the idea and used it. And honestly, now that I think about it, it's a pretty good name. Yeah, it really is. And then in the anime, Cyber Dragon's effect isn't a special summon, it's a normal summon. That's interesting to take note of. GX also has very unique decks from the tennis deck. They're able to come up with for such odd strategies in this. GX was a special time, especially in the early days, that script writers would put their heads together and come up with all sorts of ideas, and we spent a lot of time discussing how we could reproduce them in a duel or not. So there was an excitement on set that, can we recreate this theme in a duel? Okay, now let's go answer the question about Fire Dragon and Magnet Warriors. So in the opening of the first season, Misawa was seen with Water Dragon, and a dragon of fire that did not make the appearance in the actual show. Was a name or effect ever decided upon at one point in time? On the official site, it was called Armageddon for Misawa. What was this name for this card? Armageddon is an interesting name. I don't know anything about it. Maybe they asked me something, and then I answered, It doesn't fit Misawa's chemistry deck series like Oxygen, but since it's lining up next to the Water Dragon, it's probably something simple as Fire Dragon. And then, of course, for turn 36 here, looking back through all the materials, the original plans for his duels was for the first deck to be Water Dragon, and then a new card called Celageddon, a battery dinosaur, was to be added to the Water Dragon deck. During the adjustment of the duels to work the plot, it appears that it turned into the Magnet Warrior deck that became Misawa's Earth deck of his 6 elemental deck. So, I mean, there's a reference. It's called Armageddon, but that's as much as we know right now. So what do you guys think? Please, comment down below. Tell me what you guys think. I'll see your beautiful faces back here later today, guys. Patrons! Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.